Welcome to the City Rev Life podcast. I'm excited for this episode. My name is Pastor Roby. I've got Pastor Angel here, and we are going to be talking about keeping students engaged in this time of quarantine. Before we jump into that, if you are enjoying the City Rev Life podcast, I want to encourage you, you can subscribe to the podcast and get every new episode as it comes out. So I want to encourage you to do that. But man, as we're jumping into talking about this, this is an unprecedented time of quarantine, and the quarantine is no joke. Just recently, I did a FaceTime with Pastor Angel. It was kind of unplanned and spontaneous. And man, when I saw him, I almost just clicked over to audio only.
Man,
That was scary.
I'm taking this stuff serious. This is a big deal. We don't know what can happen. I mean, my wife coughed last week, and I have not even looked at her since. The fact I'm here is a big deal. So I'm not going to a barber. I'm very hesitant to even what kind of deodorant I put on, just because.
Or if there was deodorant, because I've heard rumor that there's been no deodorant when he's on a quarantine. Which, can we just start with that? On the CDC's checklist, somewhere, I think deodorant wearing when in quarantine is mandated. But for some reason, when I saw him on FaceTime, it was like his beard was bigger, his hair was big. He looked like a Yeti or something.
Have the lights turned on. I just had one like little lamp lit in the corner. I'm sorry. I'm scared.
It was like a caveman. Anyway, so the quarantine is no joke, and it's affecting. The reality is, on a serious note, it's affecting so much of society, and especially on our hearts. I can speak for Angel myself, is our students and the effect that it's having on our students. And so if you have a student or a teen in your life, a teenager, middle schooler or high schooler, we want to take very seriously the effect that it's having on their life.
Yeah, and the reality is that, for a lot of teenagers, their entire lives have been just turned upside down in this season. And, we have students who were planning on graduating from high school. They had cap and gowns already ordered, and their graduations have either been canceled or postponed. Senior trips like Grad Bash and all these wonderful things that they spent years looking forward to experiencing has now been pretty much taken away from them.
Yeah.
And so, but not only just seniors, but we have students that were gonna be starting a job or be going off into a new kind of experience when it comes to sports, and all these different things that were taking place. All that has just been paused and flipped upside down. So.
Yeah, man. And if you think about it, if you know a senior in high school, especially, my heart's heavy for them, because all the things they've been waiting for is now, it might not happen. Prom, all the things. And man, say a prayer for them, encourage them, send them a note, encourage them, because you're exactly right. Their lives have been turned upside down. But the reality is, and you were speaking about this, we were talking about this just a minute ago, our students are already a vulnerable population, and with all that they're going through, and this just adds that much more weight to it.
Yeah, I mean, you look at this generation, and the two biggest struggles of this generation is depression and anxiety. And they were struggling with these different things when they were in quote unquote normal lives, when they were fully in schools and all their clubs and everything. And now they've been pushed into their homes, and now all those different things they kind of come up at a different level. And so that's why I think this podcast that we're doing right now is so important, because discussing how to keep them engaged in something that's so beneficial, like the church, is one of those things that can really enhance the whole experience of this very confusing time.
Yeah, so I think that's so important. I think those thoughts, Angel, are just so good to keep in our mind. I know there's a lot of parents. I was actually just talking to a parent yesterday of a 17-year-old. And, parents are thinking, man, I've got to help them finish with their education. The parents' lives of teenagers is all up in the air. Yeah. They're dealing with, I could put up with this teenager for a couple hours every evening, but now I got them all day. And I mean, that's crazy. But kind of getting up on the balcony level and being reminded of what's most important in this season, I think, is critical. So can you speak to that a little bit? What is, with this challenging season around, what are the most important things to keep in mind for parents of students?
I think it's important to remember that this challenging season is not the last challenging season that these teenagers will experience. Suffering and dealing with uncertainty is the reality of life. And I know as many parents are listening to this, you're like, oh yeah, I know that. That is so true. And I think this is a wonderful teaching lesson for parents to give towards their teenagers of this is what life is like, where you make all these plans, you make all these things that you want to see happen in your life, but it's not certain. And this challenging season, we need to we need to leverage it actually to enhance us, to make us better, and to really take us to another level of understanding who God is and who we are and what we really need in life. And so I just really want to read from Romans chapter 5, verse 3 and 4, that Paul actually speaks towards this, where he tells us not only that, but we rejoice in our sufferings, knowing that suffering produces endurance, and endurance produces character, and character produces hope. When we help our teenagers see the need to engage with Christ in seasons like this that are uncertain and challenging, we are helping them and preparing them for all the future challenging and uncertain seasons that are coming. And these things will produce endurance, and they'll produce the character we want our teenagers to have. And all of that will lead to them experiencing hope, like what Paul just told us here.
That is such an important idea that, we all go through things. And this is what our students are going through right now. But just for our parents out there, and you work with teens, I have worked with teens, that can so easily become a lecture. And so how do you get that principle actually deliver that to your students? Maybe you can just speak on that for a second.
What I think is so interesting about this situation is that what we're going through with the whole coronavirus affects everyone. Everyone is dealing with uncertainty. Everyone is dealing with the stress and pressure. Everyone is struggling. And so typically sometimes when we're talking with our students, they're just the only one who are struggling. But in this one, we're dealing with it too. And so it kind of gives us a better opportunity to almost use this as an opportunity to speak and say, look, let me help you understand what I'm feeling too. And doing everything possible to not make this a lecture, but to make it a time where you're listening to what they're feeling and listening to what they're scared of, listening to what's rumbling in their hearts that's causing them to be in a place of just feeling facing the reality that their entire worlds have been flipped upside down.
Yeah, that's so good. I think for parents of teens, they're young adults now, and they see themselves as full-blown adults, and so, but going shoulder to shoulder with them, and that I love that idea of the transparency. Hey, man, and from an empathetic, not from a you're not the only one that's struggling, but from a hey, I'm walking through. This is what I'm walking through. From an empathetic ear, probably the most important thing is they need parents to just give them space to listen. And I think being a safe person for a teen, being a safe person for your teens means listening and not lecturing. And so
and it's important for them to be able to get it all out.
Yeah.
They just hold it in and they just stuff it as far deep as possible. And sometimes teens almost feel like they have to be fake in front of their parents because they want to avoid the lecture.
Right.
They want to avoid the time where their parents are going to tell them now another thing they're doing wrong.
Right.
You're feeling wrong. No, give them space to get those feelings and thoughts out and feel completely safe with the people that they should feel most safe with, their parents.
If I called a friend and said, "Hey, man, I'm so frustrated, so struggling," and I got a lecture, I'd never call that friend again. They would no longer be a safe person for me to share. And so being listening and empathetic, I think is
and
huge.
The truth is, you might have because we can't just act like every teenager just immediately opens up. There's a lot of teen boys who you would wonder if they know how to speak. It seems like they got nothing. And so one of the things I always recommend is instead of just forcing them into a place where you're waiting for something, give them questions. And you ask them a question and even be willing to say, hey, look, I want to know how you're feeling. Whenever you're ready, come tell me. Whenever, it may be tonight, it may be tomorrow. Hey, I want to know what about this scares you. Let's talk about it tomorrow.
Yeah.
And then you drop the seed of that question into their minds and let them give them the space to develop what they're going to tell you, because a lot of teens, they might not have it right on the spot.
Yeah.
And then it just drives more frustration. And then you're just yelling at them, say something. Pastor Angel told me that you were going to say something. And it's got to be on their time.
Yeah, and then when they finally do share, know when the conversation's done. It's not, don't be like, yeah, but keep going. Like they might be like, whoa, okay, I'm not doing this again. So just let them share as much as they want. Try and draw it out, but know when the conversation's done. Okay, so what else? What else for parents of teens in this season? What do they need to remember?
And I think it's very important for parents to not only just really think through what they've been through, but also what these teenagers need.
Okay.
And again, like we talked about earlier, this is the kind of thing where this is a wonderful teaching lesson, because challenges will always come up in their lives. This is not the last season of uncertainty and struggle.
Yeah.
But also, we have to help our teenagers understand that you need Jesus. You need him. He is the answer in the time of uncertainty. He is the one who provides hope. He is the one who legitimately helps us in these seasons. And for us as parents to push our teenagers to engaging with who Christ is, even in the midst of a crisis, is super important. And not only just pushing them towards understanding who Jesus is, but also pushing them towards his people and the church. And it's extremely valuable. And what's interesting is, as you study the scriptures, majority of the people in the Bible were in a moment of crisis and uncertainty and suffering and challenges, and yet they ran to Jesus. There are dozens of examples of this. And so we have to teach our students, he's the hope. And he's the one we run to. I'm not pointing to Roby, I'm pointing to Jesus.
I'm not the hope, that's for sure.
But there's that reality where we're saying to them, this is where the medicine's at.
Yeah.
This is what's going to help you. As a matter of fact, Paul actually speaks towards this in 2 Corinthians chapter 1, verse 3 and 4, where he says, blessed be the God and Father of our Lord Jesus Christ, the Father of mercies and the God of comfort, who comforts us in our affliction, so that we may be able to comfort those who are in any affliction, with the comfort with which we ourselves are comforted by God. What he is saying in there is that God comes and comforts us and helps us, but he doesn't just do it so that we can feel comfortable. He does it so that we can go off and comfort others. And it's beautiful that in this season, we can point our teenagers to remain connected to Jesus and remain connected to a place where they can help comfort others with the church and with the body of Christ.
Yeah, that's so good, man. And I think what you said before about transparency and empathy is so good. And, again, a student's not going to be super receptive to a sermon, but I think so often as parents, we want to set a good example, but sometimes what we present is something flawless, and that's not true of who we are. And our students are now at a place where they know we're not flawless. They see our mistakes, they can compute them. And so being transparent about, hey, this is how I'm turning to Jesus. What Jesus calls us to be is a witness and to bear a testimony of what he's done to our lives. That's how we ultimately share our faith, is say, look, it's like the blind man. What's going on? Are you seriously blind? Was that guy really the rabbi and the Messiah? Is he the Christ? And the blind man, finally exasperated with the Pharisees, says, look, this is what I know. I was blind, now I see. And I think sometimes our teens are in between childhood and adulthood, but they are seeing themselves in adulthood. But part of the transition is transparency and saying, hey, these are some of the things that I'm scared of, and here's how I'm turning to Jesus with that transparency and modeling that. So it's not just a talking down in a sermon or a lecture.
And it's so important to really use this season to not give them an excuse or reason to check out from community.
Good.
It's so important to use this season and leverage it to help them see the importance of checking in and even going deeper into community and with your walk with Jesus. And that's one of the things that we in our student ministry in our church, we're taking it so serious.
Yeah.
And we have actually enhanced everything we do as a church to take our students deeper into their love and understanding of who Jesus is and into their connections with each other. And so there's so many different ways that teenagers can still be connected with what we do here at City Rev Church. And so, for instance, one of the things that we're doing in the season of coronavirus is that every Wednesday we are live streaming a service, and these services are incredibly engaging. We have actually the joking languages that we're trying to turn into like the Tonight Show, which is kind of like a dream of mine. I've always been a huge fan of Jimmy Fallon, but this past week we did a cooking show. We played different games. We just have all these different ways for teenagers to watch their tribe leaders engage in fun ways, which are people that they already have somewhat of a connection to. So it adds some consistency to the people they're seeing. And in these services, we're unpacking God's word and helping them understand, how does the good news of Jesus Christ impact how we handle this season? But not only are we just doing these services on Wednesday, because it would be cool if that was it, but it wouldn't be as impactful as we want this season to be. So we've created online tribes. And so we have the opportunity for teenagers, if they sign up, they can be a part of these Zoom meeting tribes with a tribe leader and with other students their same age and their same gender, and they're given the space to process what they're going through, what they just learned in that sermon, and what they're scared of, and learning more about Jesus as a group. And so even though they're quarantined right now, they don't have to be isolated. They don't have to be void of community, and we're fighting to offer that. But not only,
let me just jump in on that, just so I can underscore some things. So 7 p.m. It's live streamed
every Wednesday
now, and they can get there through our website, cityrev.org. It's live streamed there.
Because we know we need to create many different roads to lead to one place. They could get there through cityrev.org. They could get there through our City Rev app. Okay. They can get there through our Instagram link in our bio, and they could even get there through live.cityrev.org. Okay. So there's many different platforms.
And then if they're going to get on the tribe, which I think that is huge, that they're in that community. I mean, they're starved for social connection before the coronavirus hit, and now even more so. Mm-hmm. So if they want to be in a tribe, they need to sign up first, right?
Yes.
So, and they can do that through the City Rev app. You know, that City Rev app is so important for anyone who's a part of our church, because that is the main way in this season that we're going to be communicating. And I think one of the greatest takeaways for us as a church coming out of this season, but they need to sign up through the City Rev app. Is that right?
So they have to sign up to be a part of it, because the way that those online tribes work is that the tribe leader, an hour before they go ahead and have their meetings, they text them the link to the actual Zoom meeting. So if you don't sign up, we won't know what number to text it to.
All right, I want you to share a couple of the other things, but let me just give this encouragement to parents. If you have a student, there's already some hurdles for them to engage, whether it's insecurity, busyness, a distraction, Netflix binging, whatever it is. So as parents, remove any hurdle you can for them to have this time to connect. Don't try not to schedule anything as a family. If they need to be in the living room to engage, get the other kids out of the living room so they can have that space. Champion their connecting, both with their tribe and with this online. This is so important for their souls with all that's going on, for them to continue connecting with their student ministry. So be the biggest cheerleader, help them remove the hurdles so that they can jump in.
Yeah, one of the ways that in my family, the way we've been treating the kids' lessons that are even on the app as well, we treat it, and I've just had to put my mind in this, where this is the medicine my kids need.
It's good.
And when this medicine comes up, I've got to make sure that my kids are getting this medicine and my kids are being able to tap into the things of Christ. And so it's super important for us to really, exactly what Roby's saying, clear off the schedule, saying we're doing this. We are going to figure it out. We're going to watch it together. We are making this a priority, because it is a priority.
It is. And if your student is interested in tuning in, if you even see a flicker of interest, let me remind you the number of parents that are begging the Lord right now that their student would want to get involved in student ministry. If you see a flicker of interest, praise the Lord and do whatever you can to remove all obstacles and be the greatest champion of them connecting with their student ministry. All right, we got to hit some of these other things.
So one of the things that's really helpful in helping your students see the importance of connecting is having them watch you connect.
It's good.
I think for parents to model what it looks like for them in this season, which is so crazy, for them to model what it means for them to continue to engage with the Lord and to engage with God's people. So that means on Sundays when we have our services that we put on Sundays and Saturday evening, that means you are figuring out a way to watch it in the living room and inviting them to come watch it with you. That means that you are sharing with them what you learned. Hey, man, I heard Pastor Roby talk about this. Or man, I saw Josh, he did this song. Let's look it up on YouTube and listen to it together. Showing them that this, what is our new norm right now, is your norm too. The last thing teenagers want to see, or the last things teenagers want to have, is a parent telling them to do something that they themselves don't do themselves. So it's very important for us to model our engagement with Christ still through these live streams. And another thing that's really helpful that we've done in our student ministry is we know there is so much information that comes towards teenagers constantly. And in a time like this, there's so much that's always rumbling in our minds, and it's so easy to forget. And so our Instagram pages and our church social media pages have become more enhanced, and we have focused so much attention on making sure that it's constantly reminding students to keep the important things as priority constantly. And so if you follow us on Instagram and our student ministry, the CityRev_students, it'll constantly be reminding you about upcoming services, about devotionals, about prayer time, about getting tapped into our online tribes. But that Instagram serves as a reminder and a tool for you to even celebrate with your student what's taking place in their church still.
That's huge. Let me just leave you with this last thought for you parents. I love the idea of modeling. But let's say you're like, look, this hasn't been the norm, and I want it to be the norm. I have so often in my life before, we don't watch it online. Be honest about that with your student and just sit down and talk with it and say, hey, we used to not watch online, but I really want to do that, and I'm going to start doing that every week, and I would love for you to do that with me. And I think just be honest about that. Hey, any last thoughts as we wrap up this podcast today? Any last thoughts you have, Angel?
I think just jumping off what Roby just said, your teenagers don't need a lot of answers. They need a lot of honesty. And the more honesty, the more transparency, the more compassion you give, the more likely they are to open up. I'm not a guru. And I spend a lot of time telling teenagers, I don't know. But yet they still open up. Well, why? Because I'm constantly giving them the truth. And as parents, they look for that in you. So don't feel pressure. Don't feel like you have to have everything lined up. No one knows what's going on. We're all figuring this out. Just be honest, be real, be compassionate, and listen.
Wow, great words. Hey, thank you so much for joining us on the City Rev Life podcast today, and we hope to see you in a future episode. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for joining us on City Rev Life. You can subscribe to this podcast, rate and review wherever you're listening to this. And we love it when you share it with your friends on social media. For more videos and content, go ahead and check us out at cityrev.org/podcast or download our City Rev Church app. Have a great day.